Hi, it's Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. I'm back with my plans and pans. This week I've been busy meeting with constituents and raising important issues. This week around the country, Democrats held a national week of action on health care. And I focused on insulin and the fact that the Inflation Reduction Act actually will affect 1.4 million people by reducing the cost of insulin for people on Medicare to $35 a month, beginning in January of next year. This is going to be a huge benefit to so many people because insulin is so doggone expensive. And I had a press conference with an expert. Her name is Dr. Daphne E. Smith, and a constituent named Steve Smith, no relation, who were talking about the effects of this great insulin cost reduction. Dr. Smith is a expert on this, certified when it comes to all issues dealing with insulin, and just talked about how important it is for everyone to take the insulin, both type 1 and type 2 diabetics, as prescribed. And you know, many people who are supposed to do that have either stopped taking their insulin when they can't afford it or cut it in half. Very, very dangerous. And what we heard from Steve Smith is that he had actually had to balance whether he could pay his bills or get his insulin that he needed so much. And those kinds of choices are completely unacceptable. Unfortunately, though we were able to pass the Inflation Reduction Act, not a single Republican, either in the House and Senate, voted for it. And last week, two of the senators introduced legislation that would prevent Medicare from negotiating for lower drug prices. They introduced a bill called Protecting Drug Innovation Act, because they're saying that somehow if we lower the cost of medication by negotiating with the drug companies, that we're going to stop innovation. I want to remind you, I've said it before, we in the United States pay 2 to 3 times more. 2 to 3 times more for the exact same drugs than people around the world. This has nothing to do with innovation. This is about helping big pharma charge whatever they want for medicine. We also, in the Inflation Reduction Act, began negotiating for lower drug prices. That will begin in the next a couple of years and actually lower the prices. The other event I went to this week was the announcement of a new name for Heartland Healthcare, which has been such a great organization throughout the state of Illinois and in my district in particular. I've been there many times. But they changed their name to Tapestry 360 Health, which is important because Heartland is also the name of another organization. They didn't want to get that confused. But I got to see at work because you know that the governor of Texas has sent over 1,000 people, immigrants who have walked a long way, some from Venezuela, walked all the way to Texas. And some then were sent all over the country because Greg Abbott, the governor in Texas, didn't want them to be there. It was just cruelty. They just sent them. They didn't know where they were going. There was very little support for them. They landed in places like Chicago, fortunately, because we're taking care of them. And Tapestry Healthcare, Tapestry 360 Healthcare, was at one of these shelters, one in my district, and taking care of these folks. These were mostly middle-aged people, and yet they had mostly problems with their feet. You can imagine their feet after walking, some of them all the way from Venezuela to cross the border. So we have this kind of wonderful community health centers in districts all over the state of Illinois, and we're so grateful that they are providing free or at most low-cost health care, but for these immigrants, that for these refugees, they're providing the care for free. Social Security, we had really, really good news. We learned this week that starting next year, Social Security beneficiaries will see an 8.7% increase on their Social Security. And there are 70 million people who benefit, and that'll amount to about $140 a month. That means a lot to older Americans who rely on Social Security. And let's remember that Social Security, which is an earned benefit, people pay, many of you that are listening, pay every month out of your paycheck and hope always to get the Social Security benefit that you need once you retire. And that Social Security is really, unlike many pension plans, actually does grow with inflation. And so I think, when we see that we're going to have $140 a month increase for 70 million retirees, this is a good deal. But the other thing that the president announced is that there will be somewhat of a decrease in the Medicare premium. Now, it's not huge. It's $60 annually, but, add that to the Social Security COLA increase, and, this is very important. Social Security is one of the most revered programs that we have in the United States, that we've had since the Roosevelt administration. And let's remember that Social Security went into effect during the Depression. So, we certainly can more than afford to even increase benefits. And that's what John Larson has, a piece of legislation that is called Social Security 2100 that would actually increase benefits. But what we're seeing at the same time is United States senators like Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who instead has a plan that says that instead of having this ongoing program, that every year it should be part of the discretionary budget. Maybe fund it, maybe cut the funding, maybe eliminate the funding. We have to have known security for the Social Security that you've all paid for. And Rick Scott in Florida has a 5-year sunset of Social Security, and then we can reconsider it again. No, there has to be this guarantee. Lindsey Graham said, maybe seniors ought to pay a little bit more and get some less in their benefits. That's just not going to work, and we cannot allow that to happen. Then that the January 6th committee met this week, maybe for the last time and maybe not. And there were a number of really important illustrations of what was going on during the insurrection itself. For one, we saw that the committee decided to subpoena the former president of the United States to come before the committee. Now, nobody thinks that he's going to actually show up. But let's remember that if you do not follow a subpoena, if you're a normal person in the United States at least, you are in contempt of Congress to not come in at all. So we will see what kind of consequence there is. But Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, should be subpoenaed. He should very well be held accountable. But we also saw what Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, and Chuck Schumer, the head of the Democrats in the Senate, the head of the Senate, what they were doing. There was video of their nonstop work to make sure that the National Guard and the police in other states, as well as in the District of Columbia, were called upon to do more to be able to stop the violence that we were watching. This is important because some people suggested that Nancy Pelosi actually was doing nothing, or actually, was part of extending the insurrection that occurred, which couldn't be further from the truth. So at every one of these meetings of the committee, looking at the January 6th insurrection, we have seen more and more behavior that needs to be held accountable. We have to stop that. And finally, with COVID, there's actually some new information. Now the vaccine that addresses the Omicron variant will be available to children 5 and older, according to the Food and Drug Administration. So that should be considered. We are still hearing about people who are getting the virus. On Thursday in Illinois, 2,268 new cases and 19 deaths were recorded. Now, nonetheless, still in Cook County, we're considered in a low area for the virus, but everybody definitely want to take care. And so that's it for me for this week, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much. Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where my handle is @Jan Schakowsky.